Welcome to Tennis Spin, where we put our spin on your tennis. Guys, have you ever not been happy with a string job? What was your complaint? Well, I'm going to talk about complaints of string jobs today, so stay tuned. All right, guys, so I'm sure if you've strung your racket enough that something feels a little different when you get a string job back sometimes. I've done a video on, does it matter who strings your racket? Well, sometimes it does. Depending upon if I do your racket who've been doing it for 35 years versus somebody who's stringing your racket for the very first time while watching a video of me and learning at the same time. So, because I've actually seen that happen before. So not at my place, of course. But anyways, what I have behind me though is all the rackets that I've actually strung here. Now, I know I just strung this today. That's a hybrid right there. People, and this I strung a couple of days ago. So people like to do this thing, right? You hear that? Here, I go closer, right? This strung at 50, this strung at 52. Why is... It's probably the synthetic that's making this with a lower pitch. When I see people doing this, I'm like shaking my head. Let's switch hands. No, this is still tighter. It's probably because it's the poly. The poly's making that higher pitch noise, whereas the synthetic is dampening the sound. So whenever people do this, I go like, okay, yeah, stop. It's not going to really do anything unless you're like crazy. Anyways, so the number one complaint of most people is going to be, man, they hit a couple balls and the ball don't go nowhere. You're like, man, that's tight. Yeah, it's tight because it's freshly strung. When am I going to like it? After you play with it for a couple weeks maybe, and it loosens up. Right? So tight is probably my number one complaint, is that it's too tight. Why is it too tight? It's because I reset it back to what it originally was. So those of you who don't string for 6 months, a year, 10 years, ever, right? There's going to be a major difference between what you bring in versus what you're going to get back out. So I tell people, especially when I see like an old sticker from way back in the day that says like 60 pounds, 65 pounds, even 58 pounds, and it says like 1999. I warn people, I was like, look here, you haven't strung for 1,000 years and your sticker says 65. What you have here is probably 25. If I set it back to 65, it's going to feel like 100 pounds. So I should probably tone it down a bit and get it down to like 50 or 55, so you don't have shock, like literally a lot of shock, meaning tight, too hard, ball ain't going nowhere. And you're going to be shocked at how little power you have versus 25 pounds or zero tension. So that's number one complaint. Number two complaint, which almost never happens anymore today, because, most of us string on electric machines and it's going to feel tight pretty much no matter what. Once in a while I'll have somebody come in asking for 60 pounds and they're like, this is not tight enough. It feels so loose. I'm like, okay, you You know, it ain't a wooden racket and you didn't want 70 pounds, right? Like they just want to feel the board. Literally no give to the string. So, but I mean, very rarely does that happen. I might get a complaint like that once every 6 months, so maybe twice a year. And then there's a couple actually different complaints that I get now, which is a kind of weird to me now. It feels plasticky. So a lot of these polyesters that's coming out these days kind of feel plasticky. If you guys ever weed whack and you've actually fed weed whacker string onto a weed whacker, it feels like that. It feels very plasticky. What the stringing manufacturers are trying to do is soften up the string, and for some reason it looks translucent in whatever color they choose. It feels plasticky. It sounds plasticky. So I'm not a scientist in terms of making string, but my guess is because they're blowing air into the polyester to expand it, right? It makes it more plasticky instead of making it more solid. When it's more solid, it's going to be a different, harder feel, a la Luxnalon ALU. You know, some of the newer strings like Polytor Rev by Yonex, that orange stuff, feels plasticky. It's because they blew all the air in there to expand it. At least that's what it's what somebody explained to me. Okay? Now, I've actually, when I strung at pro tournaments before, right, the thing I hated the most was when a pro would come up to me and I literally just strung their racket, and this one pro that everybody hates, right, would always come up to me and goes, he just hit with one, and I just gave him the other one, and he goes, "This doesn't feel like this. Can you make it feel like this?" I'm like, "No, man, you gotta play with it first." He's like, "I want it to feel like this." "Then play with it first." He's like, "I want this." I was like, "Then play with it first." Because I can't recreate what a freshly strung racket was 2 days ago after you played with it for 12 hours, right? I can only reset it back to what you told me you wanted the tension to be. So let's say they wanted 50 pounds, right? I think this person wanted like 37 pounds. And I was like, "Give me that racket." And I tested the one he wanted, and he was like, I was like, "Dude, this is like 25 pounds, right?" And then I go, I can't recreate that. Even if I strung this at 25 pounds, fresh off the machine, it will not feel like a used racket that's 25 pounds, as I've proven in another video. Okay? So yeah, I can't wear it down from natural play. Okay? All right. So basically what I'm trying to tell you is that there's a harder feel to a freshly strung racket, especially if it's like a full bed of poly, and it's got to break in for a while, and it's going to break in with play. Okay? So when people say it's too boardy, it's too stiff, okay, those are two complaints too. It just means it's too fresh, right? Too hard, too boardy. The string's not given much. So we just need to play with it. I guess if you really wanted to, you can leave it in the trunk of your car on a hot day and let it loosen up that way. But like I said, I can't recreate, a broken in feel. Okay? Now, the last complaint I always get is, I can't get spin. I can't get spin. Well, you're not spinning the ball, so it can't get spin. right? It has to do with your stroke. So if you're going straight through the ball and hitting flat, yeah, there's not going to be any spin. Okay? You got to go you got to impart spin on the ball to get spin. If you wanted easier spin, you go thinner mains or thinner string bed at a low tension. So, try going like 40, 45 pounds with some thin poly. You should be able to get spin out of that. Or use a racket that's an S pattern, like a Wilson, Burn S or something like that. And you should easily get spin. But to expect, spin from a string job that we don't modify a little bit is kind of, hard to do. Okay? So, have you ever complained about a string job? What did you complain about on that string job? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to see that. Okay? Thank you for watching Tennis Spin, where we put our spin on your tennis.